Hello and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. My guest today is Jo Darling, women's health expert, oncology acupuncturist and founder of Menopoised. She has created ready-to-wear magnets and essential oils to relieve symptoms of the menopause. So we had a chat so I could find out more. Hello, it's really lovely to meet you, Jo. Thank you for coming on today.
Oh, hi, Hattie. Thanks for having me on.
It's so nice to meet you. It really is.
Oh,
very
it's lovely
much
to be here.
I would love to start off by asking you a little bit about your background.
There's a long background and a short background. Straight out of university, I was a money broker, which people are often intrigued to hear about. Money broking broke me, and I then fell into marketing, which I did for 10 odd years, mostly in media, TV and radio. And then as I was growing older, possibly getting a few grey hairs, I realised that media and marketing were a young person's game. And if I could change my career path, my greyness would then actually become a sign of my wisdom, and maybe I would have a longer career. So that's when I retrained to be an acupuncturist. My son was young, and it was something that I had it in my 20s for back pain. I'd had it in my 30s for low mood, and I'd used it for arthritis, but it hadn't quite hit the mark. But what was transformative was I'd been trying to get pregnant for a couple of years, and the acupuncturist I saw at the time said to me, "Oh, you'll be pregnant in 3 months." And lo, I was. And he also knew I was pregnant before I did, which I thought was magic. A couple of things on that. It was a male acupuncturist. I now treat a lot of fertility patients, and I would never say they'd be pregnant in 3 months because I'm not doing the full job. And also I now understand how you can read the pulse, feel the pulse, to see when there's a pregnancy. So it wasn't quite magic, but very close to it. That's how I became an acupuncturist. But I guess I don't treat so many fertility patients these days because I'm mostly treating menopausal women. It's becoming more mainstream, although it's interesting. NICE guidelines change a fair bit, and we used to be recommended for back pain, and then it got changed around, and I'm not actually sure where we stand. It's a difficult thing to be practicing a different medical modality to the culture in which you're living. So if you're living in a Western culture, yet you're practicing with a different mindset, sometimes it's difficult to grasp what you're doing, and can be some skepticism around it. Some people even say placebo, and I don't really care what it is as long as people are getting better. So I focus very much on women's health. I much prefer to treat women than men. Sorry, men. I do treat a few. They tend to be very lovely people. But the reason I love treating women, well, there's lots of them, but one of the reasons is it's kind of easier than treating men because we have what I would call the fifth vital sign, and that's our periods. Even if I'm treating someone who's not having periods anymore, if possible, I like to know about how their periods were, because that will give me a really good indication of where they've got imbalances in their systems. That's why women are so amazing. I also specialise in oncology acupuncture. So I work in a private hospital down here in Hove, and I'm referred to by the oncologists and the nurses because they see what a difference acupuncture can make to somebody going through, say, chemotherapy and radiotherapy. There's been a lot of research into acupuncture as an adjunct to IVF. I actually had a paper published on it because I did some research and found out some really incredible things. So every IVF clinic will have acupuncturists who they'll either recommend or who will be there on the day to offer some acupuncture before and after transfer, because it's getting people through their treatment. So if I'm treating someone going through chemotherapy, I might help with their nausea, their tiredness. They might start with their hot flushes, night sweats, loss of appetite, emotional stuff. There's no separation between mind and body in Chinese medicine. In fact, we see emotions as a precursor to illness. So really important to treat the emotions and really important to take care of them before they become something else. So my cancer patients really have taught me so much. For those that don't know about what happens during cancer treatment, and I don't want to say it always happens, but it happens a lot, women go straight into menopause. And this is something we often forget when we're having the discussion about perimenopause and menopause. With women that go through cancer treatment, they're often robbed of perimenopause. Their hormones will go overnight. And so their I don't like to use the word symptoms, but the issues they experience are far greater and far more immediate and intense than the way we would normally experience them.
Because it's an instant onset.
Because it's instant, yeah. Because their hormones are being shut off by the drugs or by its surgery as well. So if women have surgery to remove their ovaries or their uterus, so the ovaries are the key thing. It was my cancer patients that really set me on the path of menopause, because there were points at which some women wouldn't even be able to see me in my clinic because they couldn't drive. Their hot flushes were so bad. And I do hear that with women going through natural menopause, but I hear it a lot more from my cancer patients. That and the fact that my best friend had been going through cancer, a breast cancer treatment, and I was menopausal myself, just led me to think there's got to be something else out there that we can do. And actually, acupuncturists do more than just needling. We're trained in the whole of Chinese medicine, which is a philosophy, and it's a way of living, it's lifestyle, it's nutrition, and not necessarily prescribing herbs, because you've got to be highly skilled and trained in that. So we would give a lot of advice, and completely forgotten my train of thought because I'm menopausal and I've taken myself down a road I didn't mean to go down. Oh yeah, what I was going to say was, so acupuncturists very often will leave either a tiny needle in a patient on a particular point, or they'll send them home with moxa, which is a herb we use that heats up a point, so they can continue the treatment afterwards. And I was thinking, well, sometimes people use seeds, and then I realised, oh my goodness, we use magnets as pressure onto points. And I'd done some extra training, and I was taught, oh, you could pop a magnet on this point on the body for clearing heat, which I knew this point was, but I would never use it really with my menopausal patients. So I started to use it in clinic. And I thought, oh my word, this is working. It's about 80% of women. It's really helping reduce hot flushes and night sweats. That's when I decided to do something about it, to try and help more women around the world, really. And I've done trials where I found exactly the same. It's around 88% or something like that of women benefit from using the magnet in this place. The second trial I did more recently was with Surrey and Sussex Police. That felt great because it wasn't just women on the front line, it was women working throughout the force. And, they do a tough job and it's very stressful. So it was great to be able to help them and get exactly the same response, exactly the same results. So that was really pleasing. It's trialled, it's trademarked around the world. One of my moments was I decided to go to the British Library. They've got a really good business innovation centre there. And I went to meet this innovation person and sat down, oh yeah, this is what I did. So he's like, right, let me get this straight. You have a product, it works for around 80% of women. Okay. He said, if it worked for about 1% of women, I would still think it was a good product, which made me feel like, oh my God, is that true? Things that are only 1%, not 1%, 1 out of 10%, efficacious, that would still be a good product, because I couldn't live with myself, make and sell a product if it wasn't going to work for lots of people. I already feel bad it doesn't work for 20%. And he went, oh, so what does menopoised mean in French or German? And I went, I don't know. And he said, well, you better look into it. I said, why? Because this isn't just a problem in the UK. You're going to have to take this global. Menopausal women are the world over.
Yeah.
You've trialed it and it's working. Amazing, and you look at the number of women that are out there who are going through menopause, and it's much more in the Western world than it is in Asia, say, but there's a lot of women going through it. And at the moment, we're really lucky that there are so many high profile women of a certain age who are really beating the drum just to create awareness of menopause. I mean, my view, I'm not anti-HRT. I think that's a really important thing to say, because I think people assume if you're working in the natural field that you are going to be anti. And I really hate the way the world has become in the last year and a half, that everything is so black and white and segregated. There's got to be some grey. Black and white, of course, yin and yang, can't have one without the other, but there needs to be some grey. And my role is complementary. I don't say that I treat cancer. I support people going through cancer treatment. I support Western medicine. my diagnosis is totally different. I treat them in a different way to Western medicine, and I can sometimes get results where they can't. So it's a real balance. But with HRT, I believe it's every woman's right to have it. It's pretty poor that you get the contraceptive pill in the UK for free, but you can't get your HRT for free. And there's also a real sort of disparity between types of HRT as well. One thing that women perhaps do need to know about HRT is if the first one doesn't work, don't give up. If your situation is that bad that you want to do that, then keep trying and keep going back to the doctor, because I see that with cancer. I've seen it. It happened to my best friend. She couldn't cope with one type, but another type suited her much better. So I think that's really important to know there's different types of things. It's all about information, and the more women know what other options there are. I know with the work that you do, I think yoga is absolutely incredible in so many more ways than most people understand. And exercise, and it's so key at this stage of our lives. If we're not doing weight bearing exercise, we're not lengthening and stretching our muscles, we're not looking after ourselves the best that we can. There's so much out there, isn't there, that you can do to support yourself.
Yeah, and layering on nutrition, exercise.
The food thing is key. It really is. I send most of my patients to a menopause nutritionist, even if it's just to reassess where they're at. It's almost critical, because we lived for decades, we've got into habits, we've probably looked after everybody else's health. You can't just keep going on the same way that you did. Our bodies are like machines. They change. They need extra fuel, different fuel. Nutrition is the cornerstone. I'll know through my diagnosis what type of menopause they're having, because in Chinese medicine, hot flushes alone and night sweats, I'm probably looking at 6 different types. So I'm asking questions to find out which type they would be and which organ is most implicated. It's lifestyle, isn't it? It's genetics.
6 different types of menopause.
Different types. We have a saying which is something to do with one disease, many treatments, many diseases, one treatment. I'll give you an example. It's probably the easiest way of talking about it. In Chinese medicine, the liver is one of the main organs for dealing with our hormones, because it's so closely related to storing and moving blood. And blood in Chinese medicine does something different to what it does in Western medicine, but it's essentially one of the ways hormones travel around our body. If the liver is unhappy, we get what we call stagnation, and stagnation can occur for lots of reasons, but stress is one of those reasons. And how it may manifest is as this rising anger that just comes out of nowhere. And you hear a lot of menopausal women talking about that. Something that they just feel they can't control, or they've got very short fuse, or they're massively frustrated. And so if anyone said, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, or I've got pain, maybe alternating bowel movements, headache, automatically you'd know that liver was implicated. And so I would always treat those people getting their liver moving. If I had somebody who had more issues around their food, they perhaps had a change in their appetite, they felt sluggish and bloated, although bloated could be to do with the liver. They felt they couldn't stop eating, they had brain fog, they felt sort of heavy and lethargic, then I would know that the spleen was involved. And those people, I would want to send off more to the nutritionist to make sure they've got their nutrition right. And then you've got balances of the kidneys. So the kidneys is the foundation of all our fertility. There's a wonderful piece from the classics which basically talks about a woman's life in 7-year cycles. Parts of the cycles I'm always most interested in is at age 14, this is when her period starts. And interestingly, at age 49, this is when her periods stop and her fertility ceases. And the language can be quite brutal in Chinese medicine, because it's just like, this is just a fact. She dries up and she goes grey. She's no longer fertile. Okay, great. But, even back then, thousands of years ago, because this medicine is thousands of years old, they were observing these 7-year cycles that happen to women. So the kidneys, these 7-year cycles, the kidneys always implicated in menopause, because their energy is a bit like a candle. And if you think about a candle and the wick is burning, but in order to burn, it needs wax. And eventually the wax runs out. And that's your kidneys. You've got this burning, and then you've got this wax, and eventually the wax runs out, and eventually we die. And I think that's a whole other subject around menopause and dying and aging. In fact, that's a huge subject, which I'm really passionate about as well, because I think a lot of our fear of menopause is more to do with our fear of aging. But then I think that's hugely cultural. And so the kidneys have two different things. They've got a yin aspect, which is cooling, and they've got a yang aspect, which is heating. But the heating aspect is more like the flame under something cooking. So it's not a pathological flame. It's the spark and energy of life, which you'd know from yoga, the vitality of life.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends which one is more out of kilter as to what happens. So if your kidney yin is more out of balance, you're probably more likely to get night sweats. If your kidney yang is more out of balance, you're more likely to probably get, say, night sweats, but hot flushes very early in the morning, and you might suffer more from cold after the heat. So there's all these subtle variations in a hot flush. And in menopause in general, I'm always looking for the root. The root cause is the key thing. So if you keep roots healthy, then it's going to flourish what you see above the ground, and then all the branches will be good.
Tell me a bit about your own symptoms.
In my I can't have been my late 30s, early 40s, I had really low mood and low energy, and I saw a private doctor. I had blood tests, which I now know, blood tests aren't always particularly helpful because your hormones fluctuate throughout the month.
Yes.
And I started taking progesterone. And then simultaneously, I saw a Chinese herbalist who asked me why I was taking it. And I said, well, I'm not really sure. So he said, well, perhaps you should come off it because we're doing the herbs for arthritis, etc. So I came off it and I got hot flushes, and that was the first time I'd ever had hot flushes, my first experience. And it was only while my body resettled down, but it kind of showed me how strong this stuff was.
Yeah.
And so nothing much really happened after that. I'd say I've had hot flushes on and off a bit, but I think my issues are more mental, as in forgetting things, putting things in the wrong place, all of those kind of things. But I do an awful lot of work on myself. So I've been having naturopathy, working with a naturopath for probably about 6 years. And I think that's put me in huge stead. I mentioned earlier about the fifth sign, your periods. If you have problems with your periods, then I would really urge any woman to take steps to sort those out before you get to menopause, because they are often an indication of how things are going to be. So particularly if you have a really bad PMT, I would say you really want to, it's nutrition, acupuncture is amazing for it. And the other thing I've done is I have a coach, and she's transformed my life. One of the things that I love about coaching is the fact that I understand myself so much better than I ever did. So now I know what drives me, and now I know what my values are. Love and authenticity are my two top values. So no wonder I get pissed off when people aren't true to themselves. I get pissed off if people aren't doing the right thing by other women. Actually, as I was saying earlier about getting to know yourself better, that's been critical for me going through my menopause. So I'm quite grateful to say I don't have too many issues. I mean, I have arthritis, and I've had that since my late 30s, early 40s. And that's exacerbated by stress. It's not your usual arthritis. I get swollen hands and feet, and that's massively affected by what I eat. So I know now what I do and don't eat. If I stray into the world of gluten or the land of sugar, then I know that I'm A, going to sleep terribly, and B, I'm going to have a flare up. So knowing yourself is absolutely key. Or the other thing I totally forgot to mention, because it's such a long time ago, it feels now, is that 4 years ago I stopped drinking alcohol. And actually, interestingly, that was a year before my separation. That has transformed my life, because I feel free. That tight shoe has been taken off.
Would you say you had a philosophy for how to thrive during menopause?
One thing that's really lovely about Chinese medicine, and I talk about this quite a lot, is a principle called Yang Sheng. And translated, it means nourishment of life. And it's got about 10 different pillars to it, but I've kind of condensed them down for menopause to 5 or 6. And if you look at each of the pillars, these are the key things that we need to be looking at in order to flourish really through menopause. And so it's things like how and what you eat. So eating isn't just about what, it's how. It's how you restore yourself. And I would say in there, that rest is as important as sleep, and meditative work is as important as heart pumping work. It's how you move. So we've talked, about the lengthening and stretching of muscles, but also that weight-bearing exercise. It's how you connect to people. In the acknowledged 34 symptoms of menopause, I don't see one there that's about relationships. So that connection part of our life is really, really important.
Yes.
So it's how you eat, sleep, move, restore, connect, all these things. These are the pillars of how to live well and live long, because that's ultimately what we want to do, look after ourselves in our second spring, which is what we call it in Chinese medicine.
I think that's the most beautiful phrase.
It's beautiful, isn't it? Here we go, flourishing again. Hurrah!
Yes. So tell me then about the magnets and Menopoised itself.
So Menopoised is ancient wisdom for modern menopause. So it's applying principles of over 2,000 years of clinically recorded work of Chinese medicine. And essentially, I'm harnessing that power of Chinese medicine through acupressure or the use of points with another therapy. So if I talk about the magnet, they're made to look a bit like jewels. They're tiny, tiny little magnets. And at the moment, the trials and the work I've done on these is just for this heat clearing point on the back of the neck. Essentially, you place the magnet on the back of the neck on this heat clearing point, and you can alternate it and move it around. The skin needs to breathe. So it's for clearing heat. So it works for hot flushes and for night sweats. And it's changing women's lives. There are times when you feel, particularly when you're not in your comfort zone, I've never created a product before, you feel, what am I doing this for? And then you'll get an email saying, actually, you've changed everything for me. And for some women, it's like it turns off a tap. And for other women, it reduces and makes them more bearable. And I think hot flushes they feel so obvious. And they have such an impact, both physical and psychological. What am I going to wear? What are people going to say? I've got to have the window open and closed. And I've had women in my clinic in tears. They're taking the piss out of me at work because I can't get my temperature right. And I want to go into their workplace and have a word with them, because that is really outrageous that anyone should be. It's not a joke. It's not funny. It's really debilitating. It's upsetting this person, causing them stress. If you're going to tackle anything, stress is the number one thing, I think. And then if you come back round to night sweats, I mean, I wouldn't want to compare really. I don't know which is worse, but if you're not sleeping, or you're throwing covers off you all night, and I've been there, wringing wet. And if you do have a partner and you're still sleeping in the same bed as someone, God knows how people manage that. And then, of course, you're losing intimacy in your relationship. And I don't mean necessarily sex. I mean just being with a person because of the heat. So that's why I'm so passionate. It's the biggest issue. I think it's something like 75% of women in the Western world experience hot flushes and night sweats to some degree. So that's where I've started there. There are hundreds of acupuncture points on the body. I could create a set that could work for anger, anxiety, for energy, for sleep, for all these different things. But I focus on hot flushes because I think, they're the main problem. And they were the issue I was addressing with my cancer patients who couldn't drive a car because of them. And so the magnet is kind of like our heroin product, but there's also a set of oils: embrace, cool, find calm, be collected, cool, calm, collected. And each one addresses a different issue in menopause. And so embrace cool does what it says on the tin, but I encourage women to use that oil on their feet at night. So the soles of the feet relate to the kidneys in Chinese medicine. And as I said, the kidneys are the root of menopausal issues. And the oils we have in the blend are oils that, from a Chinese medicine perspective, because one of the things we forget is oils come from plants. Herbs are plants. And so the oils are an extraction and another way of getting really good nutrients into our body. And actually, I think it's clary sage, which is a well-known, wonderful hormone balancer. But people will say, "Oh, sage doesn't work for me." Well, no, sage isn't going to work for everyone, because your menopause is going to be different from other people. So that's why this Chinese medicine lens, I can say, okay, if you are more yin deficient, then embrace cool is probably good for you. If it's much more of a kidney problem than anything else, soles of the feet at night, every night, and hopefully your flushes will, night sweats will have, flushes will improve. You need to keep applying it, obviously. You can also use it on the palms of your hands, so rubbing them together and inhaling, and you could do that during the day, so it's handy just to keep in your pocket. And then there's Be Collected, which the main ingredient in there is rosemary, and rosemary is all about clearing the head, so this is really good for bringing clarity and clearing brain fog. And then Find Calm is really obvious. It's just that one to just keep you calm and relaxed, then maybe it's one that you use to help you get to sleep at night. There is one other product which is all set and ready to go, just trying to sort the packaging out on that. I also do mini events where I teach people acupressure points and the related oils that go with them. So just one oil rather than a blend. Get a group of women together, and we do it on Zoom, and I just talk them through the points and what the points are for. And we usually use about 4 points to calm and all different things. So I'm calling that acu oil.
The magnets themselves are so beautiful. They're like art or a piece of jewellery. They're amazing.
It's always my intention, because to make something that looks beautiful is really important. I don't want it to be purple and glittery. I want it to be something that I like.
Yes.
And the plasters I've created, they're all made in the UK. Also, they're clear. I don't know if you know this, but Afro-Caribbean women experience hot flushes a lot more intensely. So why would I make a Caucasian plaster when I want everybody to be able to wear them? So that's, and they're quite small and quite discreet.
Yes, they are. They're very discreet and elegant. Please create some for the other symptoms as well when you get round to it.
I will.
What would be your one piece of advice to somebody who is currently struggling?
As I mentioned earlier, stress is huge in menopause. It's huge, has a massive effect on our health. I've seen stats ranging from 75 to 95% of ill health is, it's rooted in stress, and it can manifest in so many different ways. And there are lots of different ways of managing stress. When you say stress, it's such an overused word. And when you say to people, manage your stress, it sounds really glib, because if you're stressed, it's really hard to know how to manage it. But it's looking at balance, I think. It's understanding yourself, taking stock. So maybe the number one thing you could do for yourself right now would be to keep a diary of what's happening for you and look for patterns, because that will certainly help you if you go and see an acupuncturist, and it would help you if you saw a nutritionist. It might be that you're eating chocolate or having a drink or whatever, and like I was saying about my own health, that's what's causing you problems. So first of all, understand where you're at and then take action. And there are so many amazing people out there, like your good self, obviously, and there's a wonderful, thriving menopause network on Instagram, and so groups like Harley Street at Home. There's so much more out there in terms of support, and a lot of it free as well. So understand yourself and take note of stress and do whatever you can to take care of yourself.
I just want to say thank you, Jo. It has been so enlightening and really fascinating. Really
Absolute
lovely
pleasure.
to meet you. Hopefully in person one day.
Yay, IRL! See you later.
Wonderful.
Bye.
Thanks, Jo. Bye.
Bye, Hattie. Bye-bye.
I will leave Jo's notes on the bottom of the show notes and on our website. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.